as soon as they transferred me, I started to go into heart failure, or heart cardiac arrest. And with that, they call in a crash team. So they brought in 20 people, maybe more, into my little room, and it was quite chaotic. They had my arms all over the place, my legs. They were had me strapped down to the bed. They were shocking me at periodically, and I just said, God, I'm ready to die. I'm ready to go. I can't take this anymore. And then as soon as I made that peace with it, I died. I felt my body shake and pop. It was a violent pop out of my body. I was ejected into this dark void. And it was like an expanse of space. You know, if you look through a telescope and you see outer space, except don't have any heavenly beings or any luminous beings of any kind. No stars, no sun, no moon, nothing like that. It was just emptiness. And I'm looking into this dark void, but I was flooded with this love and total peace and joy. It was quite baffling because I had just come from a totally contrasted environment of stress and chaos and loud noises, and now it was completely silent and peaceful. And this darkness, though, it wasn't just a peaceful darkness, because the love wasn't coming from the dark void. It was kind of ominous. It was trying to compel me to just stay there content with nothing and just be happy with the peace and joy in this nothingness. That's when I realized I could see in 360 degrees, and I could see right behind me was this massive light. It was far away, but it was big and it was bright. And so I turned. I didn't need to, but I instinctively turned. And as I'm looking at that light, I could still see the dark void behind me. And while I turned, I could see both of them. So I'd never lost vision of either one. And at the same time, my intelligence had been totally, vastly increased, where I knew everything that had ever existed, every thought, every idea, every memory I had, everything was all right there. And yet it wasn't confusing. You know, it kind of is like a computer. You can pull up, ideas or things on a computer, and it's all right there. As I'm staring at this light, I realized that I wanted to be with the light. And as soon as I had that thought, I was right up in front of the light, just instantaneously. But I didn't feel any inertia or wind or anything that would have given me the idea that I had traveled so quickly. But I could remember every step I took to get to that light. I couldn't find the end of the light. I could keep, my eyes were traveling and I could see far and keep going and going, but I couldn't come to the end of it. But I was staring at this light right in front of me, and I was amazed by how it didn't hurt my eyes. You know, if you ever have looked at the sun, you know how it hurts your eyes. It doesn't feel good. But this was so much brighter than the sun, and it felt good. It felt good to look at it. And so I knew that this was something of God. I don't know that it was God himself or if it was just his love looked as light, but I knew that it was him in some form. And he said that I could come in. So I immediately went right into the light. And as I was going into the light, the best way to describe it was like a river of love just pouring into my soul, just flooding into me, un, unimaginably more than what I felt near that dark void. It was so powerful that it was just rushing into me, as if you were caught in a rapids on a river and just washed down it. But it was coming in a way that was expanding my own ability to contain love. I didn't have to have it explained to me, but as soon as I had that thought that I wanted to see him, that's when it opened up into this great big room. And in this room, it was far bigger than that dark void that I had originally seen. Except in this room, there was countless beings. I can't even imagine how many there were. The sand on a beach doesn't come close to how many beings were in this room. And they were all the shape of a human torso, except they were filled with sparkling lights. All of them had different variations of lights. Some had more, some had less, but it was a reflection of the beauty of the main light that was now encompassing this entire room. And there was one being in the center of all these that was just as bright as that first light that I had seen. What I retained, even as I was staring at him, was that bright light, the brightest light, just as bright as the light that I had seen. But that's all I could remember of his face. And I realized that because my brain was dead in the hospital room, that I wasn't able to have my imagination to reflect back this memory of his face, particularly because he's on that pin dot. He is now. So it's not something that I can have a memory of. It's not something that I'm going to be able to retain. And it was amazing for me to see it that way. But as I'm looking at him and we're communicating, it was through our minds. It wasn't as if there was audible talking. We weren't sharing any kind of a conversation that way. I knew exactly what he was thinking, and he could easily read my mind. So we were communicating in a way that was more like telepathy, maybe even a higher advanced form of that as well, because it wasn't as if we were talking that way. We just knew each other's thoughts. As he was going through all of my sins with me, he was showing me that there's three things that he wanted me to do. I needed to pray more. And it was like in a relationship on earth, we have this idea that, we have to give and take a little bit to have a relationship work. And nobody wants to be in a relationship with somebody who only does enough just to keep you in that relationship. We want somebody to really give us their whole heart. That's what God wants. And he was showing me that my life has to be a life of prayer. Everything that I do has to be ordered towards him. It has to be, if I'm going to do something good, then I have to do it for the sake of him, not for the sake of me, because otherwise I'm really just serving myself. I'm just honoring myself and make myself my own God, which clearly doesn't work because I can't create myself. I couldn't even keep myself alive in the hospital room. So that the second thing I needed to do was to learn how to suffer joyfully. So I have these three things that I need to do. I believed in science more before my NDE. After it, I believe in God 100%. I have total trust in God. I look at science now and I still like science. I have very, very strong passion for science because data is something that's very useful. But I realize from my experience, we do not have any way of measuring God. No scientist has ever come up with a tool or an instrument that can measure God. We can't even measure hope. We can't measure trust. We can't measure truth. We can know these things, but only from our own perspective. I can't explain why I love a person in my life. And other people would look at that and say, why do you love that person? But me experiencing that love is personal to me. So there are things that are in the world that are immaterial, things that we can't account for, but we know that they exist. And that's the same with God. The problem is we don't have the ability to be able to measure God and have data to prove him, but we can experience him. And my experience is a little more drastic because I actually got to see him. So that makes it easier for me to be a believer. But there are so many other people who have not seen him, and they have just as every bit as strong a faith as I do. That's the beauty of faith, is it's one of those things that can't be measured, only experienced. And that's where my shift has gone to. I believe in God 100%. I think that science will either prove God someday, or science will be continually struggling to come up with answers to why God exists in some people's lives and not in others. Well, I can prove that God exists by the fact of my not being afraid any longer. I think, when you're dying, people often are experiencing that in a dread. They don't want to die. The fact is, from the day we're born, we're all dying, just not quite so soon, hopefully, for a baby. Yet once we get a little bit older, we start to see, okay, my time is certainly getting short when I'm 80 years old. Yet an 80-year-old has often lived a long life, and they're content with it, and they're okay with the willingness to die. For somebody who was only 40 when I went through my heart stuff, I'm looking at that, and I didn't want to die at first. I wanted to try to fight as hard as I could to live, but I had no choice in it. It still happened. I had a cardiac arrest and I died. I was afraid when I was dying. I didn't want to suffer. I didn't like that pain. I couldn't even accept the fact that I was going through it. I always had overcome everything. So that fear was something new to me. I wasn't afraid in combat. I wasn't afraid of anything in mixed martial arts, but of dying in that hospital room, I was afraid. But as soon as I went through my experience with God and I came back to my life, I was no longer afraid.